It's never about price. Never, ever. I don't care what people say. It's not about price. If it was about price, you could never sell a BMW or a Mercedes. You would buy a Kia or a Hyundai or a
Yeah.
bicycle. You would never go out and buy a Rolex watch if you just needed to tell time. There is a huge market for what I refer to as that wow factor for me. I want you to know what I'm wearing.
Hey guys, welcome to the Close More podcast. This week we have James D. Feldman. He is the author, and I don't actually want to get too much into it. I'll let James introduce himself. Please take it away.
Hi, thanks for having me. So I'm the now-ist. I help entrepreneurs and C-suite executives do what? Identify what can be done now.
Awesome.
Help them discover new opportunities using existing resources, close more sales, and be on the right path for what I'm calling the recession revenue rescue.
Recession revenue rescue. Tell us more about that.
So everybody's been pretty much decimated by what's going on. Unless you were in the plexiglass business or the mask business, most companies got hit hard.
Yeah.
And my company had always dealt with C-suite executives in large companies. I can tell you those guys have been decimated because they were at the top earning the big bucks. And when things started to break down, it was easier to cut a guy that's making six figures than to cut a guy who's making five figures.
Yeah.
So when you start to come out of this pandemic, whatever it is, you need to have recrafted how you do things. So I tell my salespeople, you got to listen more than you talk. If you are doing the following, you're trying to network, and I'm going to give you the path really fast. Everybody in the world is a suspect. When the suspect says, hey, tell me more about what you do, or send me information, or give me your business card, or call me next week, that suspect becomes a prospect. When most people go to networking events, it's a hand out as many business cards, get as many business cards. That's not what it's about.
Yeah.
It's about getting that suspect to say, call me. Once that prospect says, I like what you do, I want to do business with you, and they do one single transaction, that's a customer. Now you should be focusing on your customers to make them clients, because clients are repeat customers. And I spend more time trying to move my customer to the next sale than trying to go out and get a suspect who doesn't know who I am, convert them to become a prospect, and then hopefully get a piece of business.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is, it's never about price. Never, ever. I don't care what people say. It's not about price. If it was about price, you could never sell a BMW or a Mercedes. You would buy a Kia or a Hyundai or a bicycle. You would never go out and buy a Rolex watch if you just needed to tell time. There is a huge market for what I refer to as that wow factor for me. I want you to know what I'm wearing. It isn't that it tells better time. You go, whoa, that's a cool watch. And so guys don't have a lot of ways to identify that. So I tell my salespeople, when you go to make a call, person to person, or you're on a Zoom call, you dress for success, but you don't intimidate people. So I'm a suit and tie guy. The suit and tie guy now looks like he's an FBI agent or a narc because nobody's wearing a suit and tie. So you have to dumb it down. Then I realized I had my 3D thinking hat so I could do my billboard advertising without having people ask. And then the last part is, it's not what you think, but how you think.
Love
and
that.
If there was one single piece of advice, it's WIIFM. Think of the Wi-Fi signal, W-I-F-I, Wi-Fi. Now you just added an M to it. What's in it for me? And you have to network. You have to broadcast to your customer, the benefit that you provide. See a need, fill a need.
Yeah.
And lastly, beware of distractions disguised as opportunities. Because we're chasing the shiny penny.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, It's really uncommon common sense that's going to manifest itself. You got to look where other people aren't looking.
Mhm.
You got a vision where other people can't see. And then you focus on it with your uncommon common sense. So I call that 3D thinking. So
Okay.
what is 3D thinking? 3D thinking is go inside the box. Don't think outside the box. Let's use the metaphor of the box. If I'm outside the box, how do I know what's inside the box? I'm not a mind reader. So how can I possibly solve a problem if I can't identify it? So you go inside the box, you identify the problem, you break it into components, you bring each component out of the shadows. And while you're doing that, now you're in the box, you
Mhm.
can look around and you look at the market and you say, anybody willing to pay me for this solution? If the answer is no, it's a hobby. If the answer is yes, the question is, okay, how much competition? How needed is that problem solution? And how much can I charge for it? And this is where most people make the big mistake. Here's your next soundbite. People do not default up. You start high and come down. You never start low and go up. Let's go back to the car sale. When you go into BMW, they show you the 700 series first. How much is that? This is cool. $160,000. Ooh, too much. What do you want to take away? What are you willing to give up? How about the sunroof? No, I like the sunroof. How about the GPS? No, I like the GPS. How about the 22 speaker surround sound? No, I kind of like that. How about the heated seats? Oh, God, got to have that. I'm in a cold climate. Pretty soon they've talked themselves into maybe a 600 series, slightly below the 7, but still well above the 300 and the 400 series.
I love that. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Then you've got to discover the pain. I did some work with a bunch of dentists, and they were complaining that people were upset about the fact it was $150 to fill a cavity. I said, that's because you priced it wrong. Filling a cavity is $50. Good, I'll do it. Now, did you want that to hurt or not? What do you mean? Well, there's no Novocaine with the $50. Oh, I don't want it to hurt. Well, the Novocaine is $75. Why? Because I have to administer it. We've got to do side effects. Now, did you want it to hurt when I gave you the shot? No. Well, then we could numb it with a topical. How much is that? $50. Did you do the math? I'm now at 175 and I'm happy to pay it because I got no pain. Where at 150, I was unhappy because you hadn't explained what was included. And that's
Wow.
where most salesmen fall apart. They just come in and say, hey, this is the solution and it's only blah, blah, blah. And people go, well, it's too expensive. So what? You want it to work or not? Do you want it to make the pain go away or not? And the last thing that most salesmen don't do is they spend so much time selling, they forget to ask for the sale.
I'm guilty of that in the past for
Well,
sure. You get so
I
lost
remember
prospecting.
I remember asking this beautiful girl out. And I'm going, hey, I know I'm not the handsomest and I know I'm not the tallest. She goes, yeah, I think you'd be fun. And I don't really think that I'm going to be the eye candy that you want, but I'm really a good guy. Yeah, okay. She said 3 times yes before I heard it because I was so busy pitching why she should go out with me. The same thing happens with every single salesperson, everyone,
So people
everyone.
are over talking, you'd say?
They're over talking and under listening. It's that simple.
Wow.
And then the last part is before you go out and make a pitch, you've got to do your homework. And I refer to that as a SWOT, which you may be aware of: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You need one for yourself and you need one for your potential customer. You got to do your homework. My first client that I ever pitched on my own as a solo entrepreneur agency was Toyota headquarters.
Wow.
Yeah, that's gutsy, right?
How was that?
There was an article in the Wall Street Journal that said at the time The United States government is going to limit imports to Japanese cars. Well, what's Toyota sell? They sell new cars.
Yeah.
Well, what was going to happen to the dealers? The dealers weren't going to have any cars to sell. So I thought about it for a while, and I said, well, if they got no cars to sell, they ought to be really pushing their service department. So I did an entire proposal to Toyota based on service and parts, not on new cars. And I was the only guy pitching it. They said, well, we don't know who you are. We'll give you a shot. Our first project with you will be $10,000. My third project with them was $2.5 million.
Wow.
Toyota built my business. Toyota built my business. No two ways about it.
That's incredible. What a story. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure. As I started to do business with Toyota, I kept doing my homework. And they came to me and they said, we've got this big project, and thanks to you, we're going to make this project the first time that we integrate parts and service. Because at a dealership, the Toyota corporate headquarters sells parts, but they don't get any revenue for the manual labor. That all goes to the dealer. So the more labor the dealer gets, the more parts Toyota sells, so it's a win-win. Now, that may have changed over the years, but at the time, they weren't getting anything from the labor side. Well, I didn't understand that business well enough, so I started asking Toyota more questions. I said, can you give me a list of dealers ranked by volume? So they gave me the biggest one first, and the guy in Nanook, Alaska was the lowest. I went out and interviewed the top 100 dealers. Why? Because those top 100 dealers represented 85% of the total sales of Toyota.
Wow.
So I figured out if I got the 100 dealers to be my muse, to be my educator, that when I pitched Toyota, I already had 100 dealers in my pocket. How could they turn me down? I was up against 5 companies. A couple of them were $100 million a year or more. At the time, my gross sales was a couple $100,000.
Wow.
And I won it. And I won it hands down. But it's because
you went
I
into
did
the box and separated everything and then took a look
exactly
around.
right. I did all my homework.
Tell us more about your Swoop method.
So the best way to tell the Swoop method is how I talk about inside the box. And if you've got a moment, I'll tell you 2 very quick stories.
Please.
First one is I was 7 years old. And I went to my mother and I said, I'd like an allowance. My mother said, go talk to your father. I went to my father and I said, hi, Dad, I'd like an allowance. He goes, go talk to your mother. First business lesson I learned at 7 years old, get all the decision makers in the room at the same time. So I get my mother and father together and I said, hey, I'd like an allowance. They go, no, you're not going to get one. My mother said, well, you can mow the yard. My father said, you can wash the car. My mother said, you can walk the dog. My father said, why don't you open up a lemonade stand? Okay. Went outside. We lived in an area that was a lot of professionals. The entire street was lined with lemonade stands. I'm standing there. It's hot. I'm looking at the competitive landscape and I'm going, nah. I go inside. I think about it. I come out to my mother about a half hour later. I said, when are you going to go to Shoppers World? Shoppers World was like a precursor to a Sam's Club or a Costco.
Okay.
I priced out bulk lemonade, bulk sugar, bulk paper cups, and Ziploc bags. And I figured out how to make lemonade kits. The problem I saw was that the mothers were going to have to go to a grocery store just to buy more lemonade for their kids who are running a successful lemonade business. I was saving them the trip. So at night, when it was cool, I went door to door. Hi, Mrs. Jones. I have lemonade kits. Here's one that does 20 cups. Here's one that does 50 cups. Here's one that does 100 cups. And she goes, thank you. You saved a trip. Never, ever did anybody complain about the price because I saw need, I filled the need. And at the end of my summer, I had $357 in the bank.
Damn, ballin'.
And I've never stopped.
Wow.
Now, have you got time for a bigger picture on this one?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm in law school. Law school has study groups. And one of the guys in the study group calls me and he says, "Hey, Feldman, can't make the study group. I got to go adjust a railroad car." What? I got to adjust a railroad car. What? He says, "What's your problem?" I said, what? What is adjust a railroad car? He says, "I'm an insurance adjuster." You guys lost a railroad car? Yeah. I got to go. I got to go with you. We get in the car. We go to the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad switching yard. This thing is thousands of acres of railroad cars.
Okay.
Now, the premise is when a railroad car is coming, let's say, from east to west, it stops in the middle of the country, Topeka, and they take out the cars that are going north and they move them this way, and they take out the cars that are going south and they move them this way, and somehow they misplaced this railroad car. Now they paid the insurance claim. Now they found the railroad car. So we go to see the car. It's 100 degrees. We get a bolt cutter. We open it up, and it's filled with Chef Boyardee number 10 cans of spaghetti sauce.
Okay.
How much spaghetti sauce in there? I don't have any idea. He doesn't have any idea. All we know is it's a lot of spaghetti sauce. So we measure the car. It's 60 feet long. It's 20 feet high. It's 4 feet, 8.5 inches wide. We measure the size of the can and we come up with the volume in the can and the multiplication and blah, blah, blah. It's about 33,000 gallons.
Wow.
It's a lot of sauce.
Wow.
So I'm standing looking at it. He's standing looking at it. I said, "Now what?" He says, "Well, I got to go find somebody to buy it." I said, "What would you take for it right now, just for conversation?" He goes, "I don't know, $5,000. $5,000? Yeah, I'll buy it."
Wow.
Now I don't have $5,000. I got to go to the bank and borrow the money. The bank doesn't want to give it to me. The bank makes me bring all of my camera equipment and lock it in the vault before they'll give me the money. Now I bought it. I am high-fiving, and man, I got, I'm gonna, and I'm thinking, man, if I sell this for $1 a can, I'm gonna make money. I can't lose. Following morning, the phone rings. It's the guy from Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad. "Hi, Feldman. Did you buy railroad car MDW in 1967? "Yeah, I did." He goes, "Okay, great. Move it."
Ooh.
I'm sorry, what? Move it. What do you mean, move it? He says, "You didn't think you were going to let it sit here. You do have a locomotive. No. You do have a caboose. No. You have an engineer. No. You have a trainman. No. You have the easement rights to move it across other railroad tracks. No." He says, "You really haven't thought this out." I go, "Correct." He says, "This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of." He says, "But it's your lucky day. Today is Friday. I'm off this weekend. I'm taking a couple of personal days off. I'll be back on Wednesday. Have a solution for me on Wednesday. Good luck."
Wow.
Now, let me pause for a minute. And your listeners, what are you going to do? Don't forget, I had to borrow the money. Now I got a railroad car filled with pasta sauce. What am I going to do? So I get the study group back together, and we play the what if game because I brought in beer and pizza, and I serve that first. And I say, "Guys, before we start studying, I got a little question for you. What if
What if
you had 33,000 gallons of pasta sauce?" Now, don't forget, most of the beer is gone by now, so I don't look totally stupid. And we start. Well, it was going somewhere. Yeah. Where? Military base.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, what else? Prisons. Yeah, I like that. Universities, hospitals. And we're writing all this down. Monday morning, I'm on the phone. I call the military base, which is about 100 miles from Topeka. I am ready to go. I said, "Hey, I got some pasta sauce I'd like to sell you." He goes, "What's the product code expiration date?" "What?" back in the car, back to the railroad, back to find my railroad car, dig it out, find it, get back in the car, drive back home, call the guy back. He goes, okay, it's good for about a year. He says, I'll give you $2 a gallon at
Okay.
$66,000.
Wow.
I am ecstatic. I am brilliant. I am so pleased with myself. He goes, what's your GSA number? What? Your GSA number. Government service. I don't even know what that is. I'll send you the forms by mail. You fill it out. You mail it into Washington. In a couple of weeks, you'll get a number, and then I'll buy it. I go, hey, I don't have that kind of time. He goes, I can't do anything without a GSA number. I call the prisons. You have a GSA number. I call the university. GSA number.
Wow.
So I rethink. Instead of where was it going to, where is it coming from? Now, this is important in the logic of think inside the box. You've got to consider all the alternatives. I get a hold of the product manager, his office, and there's a temp. She says, he's in a meeting. I said, I really need some help. I'm a student and I'm doing a report on the cost of manufacturing a commodity and how much it costs to make by the time it gets to the consumer, blah, blah, blah. She says, well, today's your lucky day. There's a report on his desk. Maybe it's in here. I'll find it. She goes, this may be it. She goes, all in cost, bottom line, $3 a gallon. Great. I'll wait for the guy. 20 minutes later, I'm still on hold. I'm waiting. Second rule is never give up. Never let go. He says, listen, I understand you've been waiting a long time. What do you want? I said, I've got 33 gallons of your product. Here's your product code. It's in Topeka, Kansas, and I want to sell it back to you. He says, I really don't think I got a lot of time. I'll give you $1.50 a gallon. Now, I know that's half of what he's manufacturing it for. But at $1.50 a gallon, I'm still doing all right, right?
Yeah.
I turned it down.
Okay.
Why? He wants it. I got it. That was his starting price. I said, tell you what, we got a deal at $1.65. I bumped him up 10%. He says, okay, $1.65. Do we have a deal? I said, almost. He says, what do you mean almost? I said, how much will you give me for the railroad car? The box car itself. Now, you probably haven't bought a lot of box cars, but today that box car is $135,000.
Wow.
Back then, it was probably 75. I agree at 35. So he gives me $1.65 plus 35. Do the math. It's way more than what the military was paying me. But I did something very important, and all salespeople should remember this. I went back to the guy who took me there, the original student, the insurance adjuster, and I gave him $5,000. And I said, next time you have to adjust another railroad car, I'm the first guy you call. He goes, are you kidding me? Absolutely. I then went back to the guy at the switching yard who let me stay there 5 days, and I gave him $5,000. And I said, next time you see any adjuster out here, call me and I'll take care of you the same way.
Wow.
At the end of the day, I netted $69,000, which was more than I was going to get from the first one who turned me down, the military.
Wow.
That's thinking inside the box. And that's how you understand how to leverage all of the confluences of information, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Absolutely amazing. And this is all in your book, right?
Yes. Page 47 tells that story.
Amazing. Absolutely love it, boss. And in terms of, I guess, kind of staying motivated and really getting through all of those different hurdles that you had to go through, hurdles are meant to be jumped over anyways, but how does someone stay motivated so they don't trip up or they don't lose faith? Like if somebody were to tell me no on a deal that size, I would get so in my head about it that I wouldn't know where to go from there.
But that's the problem. We get it in our head.
Mm.
some people will say, well, I don't want to call him too many times. I'll be a nuisance. Would you rather be a nuisance or lose the deal?
Yep.
I work on a very simple premise. Until they say no, I'm the one saying no. Well, I don't want to bother him. Tough. Get back on the phone. Well, I've called him twice. Well, it takes anywhere from 8 to 10 phone calls to even get somebody to return your call.
Yeah, that's true.
So now here's the thing that I do when I'm trying to play telephone tag. I use the telephone message as if it was an email. Hi, Tom, this is Jim. I've got some really important news for you. Please call me back. See, I'm not trying to sell him anything. I got something that might benefit him. Hey, Tom, I just sent you an infographic. I think it'll help you with your sales team. Here's your JFA cheat sheet on how to close more sales. Oh, great. How do I get it? You go to this link. How does he go to the link? He has to put in his email information. Before, I only had his phone information. You've got to leverage technology without being a jerk. You've got to provide value that they say, I want you in my life. Go back to Toyota for 30 seconds. I started doing so much business with Toyota that I was in their speed call corporate directory.
Wow.
It was like the in emergency pull handle. I made little signs and I gave it to every single buyer at Toyota to hang in their office that said, in case of emergency, call Feldman's toll-free number.
I love that.
And Roger, I would source things for them that I wouldn't make a penny on. I would source things that I had nothing to do with other than connecting the dots. But you know what? They got in the habit of calling Feldman. And then like 1 out of 6, 1 out of 10, 1 out of 15. Hey, I can do that.
I love that. It's really about building that relationship and
it's about trust.
I love it.
People do business with people they trust.
Very true. Very true. That's awesome, James. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
Beautiful. Beautiful. How can reps close more deals? Like what can they do to really have an impactful 2021?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll give you a link that you can put on the end of this, and it'll be my cheat sheet. And the cheat sheet is basically 10 tips on how to close more sales. And then I'll even throw in the other one, which is the objection sheet. The objection sheet is amazing. Well, let me get back to you tomorrow. Well, I have to talk to my boss. Well, we're taking competitiveness. I've got 16 reasons that they don't want to do business with you and 16 answers as to how to get around it.
Awesome.
Extreme. It is your MBA. You want your listeners to earn their MBA by listening to me? MBA stands for Massive Bank Account.
I love it. Every salesperson can relate to that one.
That's right.
I love that. And we'll definitely have those links below. Where can our listeners go to find you? How can they get in touch with you, James?
Well, the easiest way to find me is to just go to shifthappens.com.
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 Love it. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. James D. Feldman, the author of Shift Happens, with us today. Thank you so much for your time, James. And I'm really looking forward to having you back on sometime soon.
You got it. Thanks again.